Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully, you can all hear me. If I could get somebody to pop something in the chat box to let me know that you can hear me, I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Kate. All right, excellent. Thanks a lot for joining me. I thought it'd be just easier to have a bit of a Q&A session for people. So what I might do is go through a couple of questions that I've received from people, and then I'll open it up to you guys to fire some more questions towards me. I'll ask that you pop your questions in the chat box, and I'll go through them as quickly and succinctly as I can. I'll start off going through a couple of questions, as I said, that I've received during the last couple of days. I'm just going to look them up now. And I will start with let's start with that one. Sorry, I'm just waiting for a couple more people to join. Okay, I'll start with this question. If we qualify in the month of April to receive payments, but we have better months in May and June, do we lose the payments? The answer is no. Once you're into the system, you are in. You do not need to retest your turnover once you've qualified for the JobKeeper scheme. So, for example, if you tested your March month, had a 30% decline in turnover, met the other conditions, then you are eligible for the JobKeeper scheme, and you're eligible until the end of the scheme. If you didn't qualify in, say, March, you could retest in April. And if you didn't qualify in April, you could retest in May. And if you retested in May and were eligible, then you'd be eligible to get the payments for May and going forward. You won't get back paid, but once you're in, you're in. There's a question whether JobKeeper payments affect the wage subsidy for apprentices and trainees. Not that we've seen. It would appear that there's no effect on those wage subsidies. From everything that we've seen, you would get the wage subsidy for apprentices and trainees and be eligible for the JobKeeper payment as well. So that will be a very good result for those of you with apprentices and trainees. We've seen nothing to the contrary. And I say that with a caveat that the ATO are still going to provide further guidance on various issues. And we're still waiting for some more guidance, particularly around the turnover. I've got a question from somebody, which is not, they've said it's a silly question, but it's not a silly question. So the turnover test which needs to be satisfied well, they've defined turnover as GST turnover as defined in the GST Act. The GST Act defines turnover as supplies you make or are likely to make in a period. The only real major exclusion would be the sale of any capital assets. So, for example, if you sold a car or a piece of equipment, that would not form part of your GST turnover, even though it's subject to GST if you're registered. So the GST turnover is exclusive of GST in answering this question. And it appears that it's going to be done on an accruals basis. So for those of you who have cash and carry businesses, it's basically whatever's going into the bank. But those of us who run debtors, where people are paying you later, it would appear that it is going to be tested on an accruals basis. So you look at what did you invoice, say, for March last year? What did you invoice for March this year? Is there a 30% drop? Again, the ATO has said they're going to provide further guidance, but they have not done so as yet. Whether they will allow people to use a cash basis to test their turnover remains to be seen. I'll just check some more questions that we got. So I'll just run through a few more things. So the basics: to qualify, you need to be running a business. You must have lodged a 2019 income tax return or have lodged a BAS after the 1st of July 2018. You need to satisfy the reduction in turnover, which will be 30%, because I'm assuming everybody's turnover is less than $1 billion. The test period, there are 9 potential test periods. So you can test in either the month of any month from March to September, or the quarter ended June, or the quarter ended September. You can pick whatever test period you like. You'll only be eligible for JobKeeper fortnights to be reimbursed for those which fall within your test period and beyond. So you can't go backwards, but you go forwards. There will be this monthly reporting that needs to be done. From my recollection, it's called a JobKeeper declaration. What they're going to ask you is, who are your employees? Confirm that you've paid all these people. What's this month's turnover, and what's your estimated turnover for the future? Now, the turnover questions don't relate to your eligibility. This is just some data capturing they're doing, and they say it's not retesting your eligibility, but some sort of statistical gathering that they're doing. So what I might do, guys, is just open it up to you. If you've got any specific questions, pop them in the chat box, and I will do my best to give a clear and concise answer for you. Okay, we've got one. As far as reporting goes in Xero, how will the superannuation be calculated? On the 1,500 per fortnight or based on staff ordinary earnings? That depends. So the issue with super is, if you are paying people and they're working and they're ordinarily earning more than $1,500 per fortnight, then super is payable because you're paying them just normal wages, and super applies, and the government's giving you a $1,500 subsidy. At the other extreme, if people have been stood down and they will receive the JobKeeper payment of $1,500, then no super is payable on that amount. So Xero are currently working on some improvements in payroll to facilitate this reporting. I would suggest it would be prudent to create a new pay item to record any top-up JobKeeper payment and have it exempt from superannuation. Now, the extreme of paying somebody $1,500 when they're not working is obvious. Where you have somebody who is still working but they're earning less than $1,500 a fortnight, you still have to top them up to $1,500. That top-up amount will not be subject to superannuation. So again, you'd want to split it between the normal wage component, which will be subject to super, and the top-up component, which would not be subject to super. Xero haven't given a time frame, so we'll have to wait and see, but I think just creating a separate pay item initially is the way to go. I have another question. Do you think we'll be able to claim GST turnover invoiced by a partner entity, not by your own entity directly? That's your different entity invoicing this year. The test, the turnover test is based per entity. So if you had two entities, you would test each entity separately. So you'd have to look at this year's turnover in each entity and then compare it with last year's turnover in each entity. Having said that, the ATO has said, or I should say, the Treasurer in his rules has said that the ATO has discretion to provide different turnover tests, and that would be in cases of business amalgamations, acquisitions, or unusual lumpy seasonal trading. I think you'd be able, in that circumstance, because there's been a change in structure, to apply one of these alternate tests. However, we've received no guidance on this as yet. So I can't tell you what it is, how it will work. I do know it needs to be a legislative instrument. So it sounds as though they're going to have to put through some regulations which will apply to classes of people. But unfortunately, I just don't have the answer for that, unfortunately, at the moment. It's very much a wait and see. Just a bit of a reminder, guys, that it's a bit of a two-stage process. We need to enroll into the job seeker scheme, and then we also need to apply later on for it. The enrolments begin or open on Monday the 20th. It's an online form with the ATO. Nobody has seen this form yet, so we don't know what it involves, what is going to be in there. Based on the information they've provided, it will be confirming that you're eligible, providing, I don't know whether you need to specify your test period then, or whether it's just a tick box saying, yes, I'm eligible. I'll tell you on Monday. I will send it. I'm going to do one as soon as I can on Monday, and I'll flick around an email and tell you what I find out. But I don't have a lot of information on that yet. We can do it for you, but I do encourage people to have a go themselves. Just make sure that you've got a MyGov ID and you can go and you can access the business portal to do this. I don't think this is going to be difficult stuff, but you just need to be set up to do it if you're going to do it for yourself. By the 26th of April, you need to have, that's the last day you can enrol for the JobKeeper payment. And you've got to make sure that you've paid all the employees that you're claiming for at least $1,500 per JobKeeper fortnight. And it's a one-in, all-in. You technically, if you're going to do this, you have to pay all your employees a minimum of $1,500 per fortnight. By the 30th of April, you have to have made sure you've received the JobKeeper employee nomination notice from your employees. There's a link in the previous email. It's available on the ATO website. It's just a simple little form you give to your employees. They fill out their name and date of birth and stuff and sign it. On the 4th of May, we will be able to apply for the JobKeeper scheme, and that's where you'll need to confirm the actual eligible employees and that you've paid them by the 26th of April. You need to confirm that on the 4th of May. So there's a sort of two-step process to it, and then during that first week of May after that, then they're going to pay businesses. I've got another question. Business is on a cash basis and accounts for accrued income at the end of the year. Will the income reduction test be on a cash basis only or account for the end of year adjustment? As it reads at the moment, if you look at the GST legislation, it talks about supplies you make. You make a supply when you do the thing and when you invoice them, not when you get paid. So it looks like it's done on an accruals basis. So even though you may account for GST on a cash basis, you may even do your income tax, some of you, on a cash basis. It looks like technically you would apply an accruals method to looking at your turnover. Again, and this is a pretty critical question that we haven't received any guidance on. The ATO website just says they will provide further guidance. I just can't really add anything to that, unfortunately. Melanie, to access the business portal, if you send me an email, I'll send you the link, but if you Google ATO business portal, you'll be able to find it. Any other specific questions, anyone? The requirement to pay $1,500 fortnightly, how does this work in practice for a trust that pays a monthly transfer to the beneficiary rather than a fortnightly salary? So if you're going to claim as a business participant, so The JobKeeper payment is available for your employees and one business participant, I believe the description is. A business participant is somebody who is actively involved in running the business, is not employed elsewhere other than casually, and is either a sole trader, a partner in a partnership, a director or shareholder of a company, or an adult beneficiary of a trust. Now, the requirement is that the employee, quote unquote, is paid at least $1,500 per fortnightly. If you pay either employees or a beneficiary monthly, then the ATO says if you can use a reasonable basis to apportion it. So if you pay somebody $3,000 a month, then that will satisfy that requirement. So in that example, if the beneficiary had been paid $3,000 once a month, they would satisfy that requirement to have been paid $1,500 per fortnight. Important things to note about business participants is that requirement that they are not employed elsewhere other than in a casual position, and that you can only have one business participant to be eligible for the JobKeeper scheme. Even if you had 2 or 3 unrelated parties involved in running a business through a trust or a partnership, only one person will be eligible to be nominated for the JobKeeper scheme. It seems pretty inequitable to me. Maybe there might be some opening up of that once they've had a bit more of a think through this. But that is what the information is at the moment. I'm sorry, compare them to. Sorry, my headphones are about to go flat. One sec. All right, young Evan's on the line, and he's telling me that there is no requirement for business participants to be paid. So I will take that as correct. I'm just having a quick read. I'll double check that and clarify. Yeah, your test periods you can project. So if, for example, your March 2020 was not 30% down on March 2019, you could project your April 2020 and compare it against your April 2019. The April 2020 projection you do has to be based on some substantive sort of methodology, and you would have to have some reasonable basis on which you come up with that estimate, that projection. The thing to keep in mind is you need to have some evidence and some proof as to how you came up with your projection. So if I'm going to project my June quarter, so April, May, June is going to be 30% less than my June quarter last year, so I'm eligible from the start of the JobKeeper program, I can't just make it up. I need to show how I've arrived at that. There needs to be some calculations. There needs to be some reasonable basis, and more likely than not that this will transpire. And it's an important note. And again, we're waiting on guidance, but it's important to note that you need to have a reasonable basis and some substantive sort of evidence. So, for example, if you're a business that's been shut down, then that's obvious. Okay, it's not a big hurdle to jump over. Or if you've been significantly reduced, like if you're a cafe and you can only do takeaways, I mean, you just look at your turnover figures. Well, this is what's happened since they closed me down. It's clearly not going to. It's clearly going to be reduced by 30% going forward. The harder cases are going to be where you're sort of close. So there needs to be some thinking behind how you're going to justify, I think my turnover is going to be 30% down. And it might be, we used to get 20 inquiries a week, now we're getting 2. Well, that would, lend a lot of weight to the thought that you're not going to be able to do those same figures. Melanie, any news on PAYG refunds? They will start, the credits in your integrated client accounts from the cash flow boost will start appearing from the 28th of April. And if that puts you into a refundable position, then the refunds will start to be processed. We've got 7 minutes and 3 seconds left according to my counter here. Has anybody got any other questions around the JobKeeper or anything else? Just going to look up something. Yeah, so just remember, if you want to be eligible from the first JobKeeper period, you're going to have to test March, April, or the June quarter, I'm just having a look through some notes we have. Yeah, remember it's a 1 in all in. So if you've stood down employees, they all must be paid. And this is going to cause a cash flow problem for a lot of people, I think. Yeah, we can, Samantha. Yes, we will do another webinar then around the cash flow boost. Gail, yeah, our understanding for sole traders, Gail, is I think you still have to enrol, but you don't have to fill out the nomination form. You don't have to nominate yourself. So that employee nomination form you won't have to do, but I believe you still need to go through the enrolment process, but I'll come back to you about that. Anything else, anybody? Okay, well, I might leave it there, everyone. If there's no more questions, I'm sorry I don't have amazingly more information, but it's coming through in dribs and drabs. So I hope you can all enjoy your weekend. And once I've done one of these on Mondays, I'll flick around an email and let you know how it went. All right, cheers, everyone.